Last class after the test, we started Unit 3, which is Chapter 5 on statistics. And we just introduced a few terms. So range, which would be from the greatest value to the least value. I'm just going to go to one set of data we looked at. How about this one here? Okay, so for the range in here, we would find the smallest value, -2, and the largest value, which is 2. So range would be 2 minus -2. So there's a range of 4 degrees Celsius in here. We also talked about mean, which we show with an X and a line over it. And to find mean, we add up each value and then divide by the number. So it would be sigma temperatures over the number of temperature. So N is number. And so this would be 1 plus -1 plus -2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 2. Okay, so that's 0 minus 2. So this would be, and then over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that equals, so that's 0 minus 2 minus 2, 0 plus 2. So it would be 2 over 6, or 1/3 degrees Celsius, or 0.033. We talked about the median, which is the middle value. So here we write everything out from smallest to greatest, -2, -1. And I'm just doing this quickly. You would always add in all your decimals. 1, 2, 2. There is no middle value here, so we have to take the average of these two. 0 plus 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So the median value is 0.5 degrees Celsius. And remember that every single time you give an answer in range, median, mode, mean, make sure you give it the same unit as the data has. And then mode would be what appears the most. So here, 1 only appears once, -1 only appears once, -2 appears once, 0 appears once, but 2 degrees appears twice. So my mode is 2 degrees Celsius. And so that is what we did last class. And today we're going to look at section 5.2, which you were given in class the other day. And we're going to look at frequency tables and graphs. And so this is how we show the data that we find. So when we talk about frequency, luckily this is a word that we use in our everyday language. So if something occurs many times, we might say this is happening frequently, or it's a frequent event. Or if you go to the library a lot, you say, oh, I go to the library frequently, or the gym frequently. And so that frequency, its technical term, refers to the number of times a data value occurs. So if 3 students score 100% on a Math 11 quiz, the frequency of that score is 3, because there are 3 students. So F for frequency equals 3. And sometimes it will be written as frequency, and sometimes you'll see an F. Especially if you're taking any physics or you're planning on taking any physics, frequency is always shown by an F in physics. Okay, so in statistics, usually we have huge amounts of data to analyze. And so we have to organize it. And one of the best ways we organize it is into a frequency table, or sometimes it's called a frequency graph. And this involves organizing the data into what we call intervals, which is just a special statistics way of saying groups. So we arrange all the data into intervals, and then we tabulate the frequency of the data in each interval. So say you're looking at birthdays in a school. Your interval would be, say, month. So you put all the birthdays for each month into its own interval, and then you would see the frequency of the data in each interval. So you'd see that, maybe there are in a school 80 birthdays in July, but only, 12 in February. So you'd be able to see, and here we have this here, by organizing the data into intervals, it's easier to see how the data is distributed. And once we see how it's distributed, we can then draw conclusions and compare sets of data. And that's what we want with statistics. When we gather all this information and all this data, we want to know what it means, what it's saying, and how it compares to other things that we know. So here's an example. These are the exam marks out of 50 for a class of Math 11 students. So you have, 4 times 5? So you have 20 marks here. So let's look how to make a frequency table. So we're going to make a table with 3 columns. The first column will tell us what's being measured. And so what are we measuring in marks for a test? We're measuring the marks. And then we have a tally and a frequency. So the second thing we do once we make this table is we have to find out how many intervals we want. And usually we have between 5 and 12 intervals. Less than 5, it's hard to find something significant, or what we call statistically significant. And greater than 12 is just a lot of data to take in, and usually it's just too much to understand. So to determine the size of each interval, we have a formula. So it's not just some guess, you get to use a formula. And what it is interval size, and we round it up to a whole number. Range of data, so we learned how to do that. This is the exact same thing that we did in the first section of the notes. So we take the greatest minus the least, and then we divide by the number of intervals. So say we chose 10 intervals. We take our range, divide by 10. Okay, and this here, like I was talking about before, this is our rule of thumb. Okay, so in some gigantic studies and some very scientific things, they'll have more intervals or less. But in general, in the statistics that you'll encounter in your everyday life, usually there's between 5 and 10. So let's go back and look at our data, because we want to find our range. So the test is out of 50. So let's find our highest mark, and it's 50, and our lowest mark, which is 25. Okay, so we have our highest and our lowest. Now we can find range. I'll go back here, and we'll have range equals 50 minus 25, which equals 25. So we're going to look for our interval size equals 25 over, and then we have to think about how many intervals we want. So looking at this data and looking at the values, so that it's out of 50 and it ranges between 5 and 25, I think, and of course you can break this down, different people will break it down different ways. I think it makes sense if we go up by 5. So if we start at the lowest, 25, and go to 30, etc. So then we go 31 to 35. So let's go down and fill that in our frequency table here. So we have 25 to 30, 31 to 35, 36 to 40, 41 to 45, and 46 to 50. And I want to make sure, so how many groups do I have? I have 5 intervals. And so I have 5 groups and 5 mark intervals. And I think that that is a good number to have. It falls within our range, and so we'll put 5 here. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, so 5 intervals is the minimum, but it's a reasonable interval size for this group of data. And then we have to, and remember this is our marks. Okay, and then what we do is tally, and by tallying we mean just like you've always done in you know, keeping score. We're going to tally like that. So let's look for 25 to 30. And here's our data down here. So we have 25. So anytime you see anything between 25 and 30, we can write it down. I see 29, 28, and then over here, 29. So there's 4 within the first interval. The second interval is between 31 and 35. And it looks like we have 1 here, so there's 31 and 33. So there's only 2 there. Between 36 and 40, let's look what we have. We have 37, we have 38, we have 39, and we have another 39. Between 41 and 45, let's look what we have. So we have a 42 and a 43 in this row. We have a 45 and a 44 in this row. And over here we have a 42. So we have 5 in that one. And then our last interval is 46 to 50. So let's see who we have here. In this first column, we have 48 and 47. We have 50. We have 49. And over here we have 48. So those are our tallies, and then in our frequency, we can bring this over here. It's a frequency of 4, 2, 4, 5, and 5. So right here you can see the instructions. Tally the frequency for each interval, place 1 mark in the tally column for each data value, and that's what we did. And so this is our frequency table, which does help us organize the data. But you'll notice in magazines or newspapers or school, we never really see these tables. What we normally see is a graph of some sort, a bar graph or a chart like this, a polygon or a pie chart, which are now called circle graphs. So we have 2 main types of frequency graphs. You have a frequency histogram, okay, and a frequency polygon. So in your frequency histogram, here you'll see down here, these are your intervals. Just 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So what I was saying is each bar on this histogram, okay, I'm going to record this in a different video, and so there'll be 2 videos this week, okay, so make sure you watch both of them.